When you were doing his guitar solo for Magic Sun at Presence, you were doing the and you were like, oh no, I messed it up. And all of us were in the studio.
Really high harmonics?
Yeah, that last.
Yeah, whenever you don't think that you're getting a good take, because you get in that mode where you're doing it, and you want to perfect every last piece of it, and then all of a sudden you get this one random squeak or noise, and everybody's like, oh, that was perfect.
Yeah.
You'll never reproduce that again. I gotta keep that take. It's like
we knew that. Like he'll never be able to do that. It was great. You'll never get it again.
Really? But that was an accident.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
It's funny, I have very little memory, like clear memories of recording a Crystal Vision. I have memories of going to eat at the lunch place next door. I have memories of being back in the green room sick with stomach ulcers.
Yeah.
And I have memories of tracking the rhythms with you playing drums, because that was like day one.
Yeah.
But I barely remember tracking vocals, and I barely remember tracking leads.
I remember as soon as we got done tracking all of our basics, John comes out and he goes, "Oh, the mic on your top two toms hasn't been working the entire time." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
No, that happened. That kind of stuff happens.
We had to read, like, in the title song, had to retract that a couple
You're just
times.
lucky that
I remember that. You just did like a punch-in of just the tom fill and stuff.
Yeah.
You're lucky you figured that out before you took your kid apart and left.
I know.
We did some stuff with Dave where it was months later, and like every time Lou did a fill, it was like, and we were like, oh!
Yikes.
That was the first time ever being in a big studio like that recording for me. And I just remember
you had only been in the band for like what, 6 months?
maybe something like that.
Because you hadn't done any of the demos with us.
I remembered going in there, and I remember all of us sitting in the control room, and for the first time, he had that big G-Series SSL board.
John was all about his
and he had just gotten his new board, and we were like,
and
this thing's like, I feel like I'm on the bridge of the Enterprise right now, like sitting there looking at all this gear. And I remember the first time seeing somebody splice in 2-inch tape.
That's right, yeah.
He was like, this is like before we have the luxury today, like of all the digital stuff and,
I remember him, every time we'd get to the session, he would be calibrating the 2-inch machine.
He'd do the tones. He'd put the tones on the machine.
He'd be calibrating every VU.
Do the bias.
Doing the bias,
The bias setting on the 24-track machine.
Yeah. I remember that stuff. I totally remember that. And there was no other studio in Connecticut that had gear like John did.
I think a big adding to the sound was the analog aspect of the tape, as opposed to now that everything's digital, much cleaner. So you might hear that as well, like the warmth of the sounds coming off the 2-inch tape.
You know what I've always wondered about is I never really thought much about the impact that Dave Abruzzo had on us. But because when I listen to a Crystal Vision, there's things that I would just do differently. Now that as a producer and having produced several Sacred Oath albums. But he did something on that record that actually sort of lived on beyond what we did playing wise, that whole spooky sound that I never really realized how much was him until you had me go back and listen to the demo Shadow on the Planet that he also produced. And I it's only recently I've been thinking about his impact on Crystal Vision, because it really has people like the sound of that record. I have a hard time listening to it.
Was he also involved with doing the early records, like Night on Brocken?
No. He was only their live sound engineer.
He was only doing live stuff.
Yeah.
So he never had.
But he did sound for us at the Agora too.
Yeah, I didn't know if he had any opportunity to have a hand in any of that, like working in the studio.
No, he was
even as a first engineer or something like that.
Yes, he was. He was there for Spectre Within and Awaken the Guardian, as sort of in his system.
There's an energy on that first record that's difficult to reproduce. All those basic tracks were done, the four of us, all together in the same room,
Yeah.
from beginning to end. No punching in, no, okay, we'll go back to the solo and we'll punch in there type of,
Yeah.
it was, that's really
I think
cool.
what you capture when you're that young and you're in a studio and everything is fresh, and we played that stuff to death, and we played those songs so often.
Yeah.
You're gonna go back and listen to that. Like, we were tight. Like, we
were
played
well
like
rehearsed.
we knew every little thing that we did.
Yeah.
We really, looked at every little minuscule aspect of the songs, and we fine-tuned them.
But in a different way. We looked at the songs back then. We looked at the songs in a rehearsal setting that way, but never in the studio setting that way.
Well, you start to realize yourself when you're listening to a playback, something like, oh, wait a minute, that's what you're doing, like,
Right.
Because you're exposing everything. But I mean, in all fairness, like, even when I joined the band, I remember sitting in his bedroom at like 17 years old, literally sitting there, and for the first time having him show me like.
Ferryman's Lair.
Yeah, not just Ferryman's, but just all the songs we went through, and I remember sitting there, like, he was so specific about every little thing he did, like really, it was like a challenge for me. I was like, I took it as like a challenge, like I'm gonna learn this fucking shit, like I'm gonna like nail every fucking part of it, and but it's true, like he has like a gazillion parts. The notes are like, it's not like something common that I would have normally played. So like for me, it was like a challenge.
It was hard because it wasn't natural for you right away.
But it was a testament to how meticulous you were about things, and your ear, and you paid attention to all that stuff.
But that's
and I think it made us a better band.
That's why you were the guitar player, though, because when we sat down and went over the trip. No, but I mean,
we're having a moment.
No, because it was just like it was the same thing as when we were looking to for and found Billy. There were guys that were like, okay, and then they'd give you their version, and you go, no, this, yeah, okay, whatever, and they'd give you their version.
Yeah.
Glenn was never that way. Glenn was like, hey, wait a minute, what was that again?
Yeah.
All right, like this, no, like this, no, like this. Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. And then that was it. You had it.
I enjoyed it.
You were a very, very smart musician. Sacred Oath was if nothing else, had very smart musicians in it. We all like.
And a drummer.
Yeah, and a drummer. No, there wasn't a whole lot of explaining that had to go on.
Right.
It was like, no, man, we all have this standard, and this is what we're after, and just this is what it's got to be.
Yeah.
I enjoyed remember playing in Pendergast's basement.
Yeah.
I remember like going.
That was right when you joined.
Yeah, when I joined, and that was right at the time that we wrote like Magic Sun, that whole wave of songs, right?
Wow.
That
Magic was
at
written
that time.
when you joined.
Yeah.
Wow.
Magic, Message.
Message.
Yeah. The beginning.
Two Powers even. That wasn't.
Yeah.
Those were all new. The songs that predated me was all the Shadow Out of Time stuff.
And that's why those songs ended up on a Crystal Vision instead of Queen of the Night and Prophecy and those songs, because you were still a brand new. You were the newbie in the band when we did a Crystal Vision.
I got to
and we
play
were
and do
so
my own
excited
stuff
about those songs
because it was creating stuff.
Yeah.
As even though. One guy would maybe bring in the whole idea of the song. Everybody got to kind of put their own personality into what they were doing, which was a good, fresh start to something. Whenever you got a new lineup to a band.
Oh yeah, and what the sound that you brought to us was exactly what we were after, and it was unique.
Yeah.
It was different than what Pete and I and Kenny were doing. And it just made the band even more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? You were tuned into what was going on right then and there with the guitar hero aspect of the genre. No, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I was never.
Oh, it was big.
I was always immersed in writing and what was going on creatively, and I was never paying attention to Yngwie and all those guys, and you were totally absorbed in those. I'd come, and when we were rehearsing in your basement, I'd walk in there and you'd be like doing some new technique that you learned off a video from watching some guy. And it was like, this is perfect. The biggest difference between Crystal Vision and Fallen, because Fallen really is like an evolution. It represents like an evolution of the band. So does a Crystal Vision at that stage, like you said, like you had been in the band 6 months and you started writing, we started putting all the songs together. But the biggest difference, and it has a lot to do with our age.
Gray hair and sciatica?
Our age at the time, where we were in our life, and the era, the popularity of the music, just all those factors, was that in our youth, is that all of our work, because we were detail oriented, but it was all in the lot. It was all in rehearsal. So like we would go over the songs and work it out but always with the end goal in sight that it had to be able to be delivered right there like that. Meaning, like when we went into the studio, we just did what we do in rehearsal. Whereas with Fallen, the big difference is that it's all worked out in the studio. It's a totally different kind of way of fine combing and polishing the music, because when you're doing it in the studio, it's like it's different. It's like you're literally like examining phrase by phrase of a guitar solo or a vocal line or a drum pattern, and you're like, all right, you play it 150 times back at yourself alone. You know, not in real time where you're jamming through it, but just that.
You are afforded the luxury of really, when you, especially like we all did it, or actually you, Pete, and myself did it by ourselves. We all did our own thing. So I did things at my speed. So like it wasn't sitting there looking at the clock in a studio when somebody's like, all right, come on guys, we already used up the time for drum track. It's
Was it like that? Was it like that when we did a Crystal Vision?
There was time.
We only had so much time to do certain things. We couldn't expend too much time doing particular guitar solos. Like we gotta get moving. We gotta get on the vocals. You know, whatever.
I don't remember ever really doing many vocal tracks over.
I don't really recall, but I know with Fallen, I know that the luxury of, as an artist, as an individual, being able to sit there and really create something and play with different ideas, and then listen to them back without people looming over you and like you know waiting for you to finish so they can get onto their part. It gives you a little more ability to really.
There's no other way to make that record, though. There's no other way to make Fallen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Pete was in Illinois.
Yeah.
Everybody's extremely busy. And there was really not even a 2-week period of time that we could have dumped ourselves into a studio and shut everything down. I mean, we've all got families and we've all got things that we, on a daily basis, that require our attention. You know, we could. Well, how many times did we get together to rehearse? Twice.
That's about
right.
Yep.
And if we hadn't already had, if we didn't already have that history, and like that sort of that like tapestry that we could just link right back into when we were doing our tracks,
because
it would have been a lot more.
Because we're the only ones that thought like that, because we were in it, and it was, you know, not saying it's like super groundbreaking what we did or whatever, but like there was a formula there that really is kind of different from everything else that's out there. I mean, there's all kinds of metal, but like, I really do think it's different. I don't know that anybody would listen to it and be like, it's got elements of different things, but you can't really say, oh, it sounds like that.
I'm Rob.
It's Glenn.
Kenny.
We are Sacred Oath, and we are promoting our most recent album, Fallen, which is a reunion album of the original 4 members that recorded a Crystal Vision in 1987. And here in 2013, we just put out Fallen, which the entire album has been recorded by myself, Glenn, Kenny, and Pete Altieri, who was not able to be with us here today. But We feel it's a really, really good record. We're so pleased that we made it, and we think you should pick it up.
And buy it. Don't just pick it up and look at it.
Yes, buy it.
Pick it up and buy it.